Things have deteriorated here to a degree that I didn't foresee. I didn't know how much writing about the things that are happening out here would affect every single part of my life. And maybe that was stupid of me. Maybe I should have considered it more seriously. But honestly, I just thought I was writing about things that a few people would want to hear. I didn't think it would get this much attention. People ask me about the stairs now. It doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, I never really know what to say. My bosses know someone is talking about them, and I'm sure that if they know, the higher-ups know. And I can tell you that they aren't happy about it. I've been formally told that I'm not to speak a word about them to anyone anymore, which is part of the reason this has to be my final update. I can't risk my job for this. As much as it's been wonderful to get a lot of these things off my mind, I still do love my work, and I need to be out here. If anything, my being aware of what's really going on is enough reason to stick it out. I may not be able to tell people that they're out there, but if I see them, I can direct traffic away to somewhere safer. Because of the amount of attention the stories have gotten, I've heard a lot of stories being swapped back and forth. I've heard so many I can't even remember most of them. The ones I do remember are the ones that I wish I could forget. One story that's made the rounds here was about a young woman who disappeared upstate. Initially, everyone assumed she ran away. She didn't come from a great home life, so it really wasn't any kind of surprise that she'd choose to cut and run. But people started coming forward saying they'd seen her around the park shortly before she vanished. So some of the rangers in the area were sent out to make sure she hadn't hurt herself or something on any of the back trails. It took them a while, but they did find her. Well, not all of her. Just half of her tongue and a quarter of the lower jaw. Very clean cuts from what I heard. They've never found the rest of her. So many stories about children. So many of them going missing and turning up in caves, wedged in between impossibly tight spaces. So many of them found on mountain peaks or at the bottoms of sheer gullies. Missing shoes, missing socks, or found with both in perfect condition, despite them being miles and miles away from where they vanished. So many stories of black-eyed people, wandering around the woods and calling out in the night, mimicking the sound of running water or a bobcat screaming. One man in particular goes to every news station he thinks will listen to him and tells the same story. He was deer hunting, had camped out in a very remote area, and woke up because something was scraping against his tent. He thought it was a raccoon or a fox, until the thing pressed its face against the door of the tent, at which point he could very clearly make out a human nose and mouth. He kicked at it, but it leaped back and was gone by the time he opened the tent flap, gun at his side. He fired 2 warning shots, but when the sound had faded, he heard a snap behind him. A man was standing at the edge of the campsite. This man wasn't wearing any clothing, but he also didn't possess any kind of human flesh. As this hunter described it, the man was made of some kind of amalgamation of raw meat and hair, as if someone had scooped up roadkill and moulded it into the vague shape of a man. The face was lumpy and only a rough approximation of a human face. The thing opened its lopsided mouth, and from it came the sound of the gun the hunter had fired. It did this twice before mimicking the sound of the tent zipper and fleeing into the night. A young couple, out for a hike in the rocky areas of my park, reported to me yesterday that they'd seen something strange out on a peak I'm very familiar with. They were taking turns looking through a pair of binoculars when the man noticed a hiker climbing up a very steep part of the cliff face. He watched the man scale the slope, and it didn't occur to him until the instant was over that this person had no climbing gear. When the climber reached the top of the peak, which was about 5 miles away, they turned and faced the young man. He said whoever or whatever this person was looking right at them. The climber waved in an exaggerated manner before snapping in half at the waist, sideways, and leaping off the peak. The young man didn't see where the climber landed. I sent them on their way with assurances that I'd check it out. I lied. I won't be turning in a report because there are 10 others exactly like it. The climber's well known in that area. I don't even question it anymore. Anyway, it's summer now, which means we're dealing with a massive influx of people in the parks. We're an incredibly popular camping destination because of our large amount of campsites in various scenic areas. And in the summer season, these camps are almost always operating at almost full capacity at any given time. We're well staffed, and all of us know what to look for, what to expect. We have teams standing by in the event of any kind of emergency. Even so, people still manage to slip away. In response to a couple of other incidents at the same site, we installed a camper near the entrance, and a ranger stays out there every night. We rotate, so everyone spends one night a week there. I chose Wednesdays, as these tend to be relatively low-key, with only our long-term guys around. This particular day had been humid, like the inside of a locked car. All of us were relatively miserable, but the camper had a small AC unit, and the campers and I took turns sitting in it until the sun went down. We all bedded down, and I had the AC turned up as high as it would go. It's a loud unit, so I had earplugs in. The camper's tiny but comfortable, and I fell asleep relatively quickly. I woke up in total silence, and it took me a minute to realise that was the problem. The AC had stopped, and there was absolutely no sound outside. I sat up, and the sheets didn't make any noise. I clapped. Nothing. I even yelled. Still nothing. This has happened to me before. I'm a firm believer that it's some kind of strange acoustical phenomenon, but I don't think it's caused by the wind. I got out of bed and yanked on my boots and flew out the door. I ran to the edge of the campsite, about 500 feet away, and somewhere behind the trees, there was something darker than the space around it. I headed for it, but I must have misjudged its distance because it took longer to get there than it should have. They'd split a tree in half. I've seen lightning do that a few times, but not this cleanly. This cut was surgical. The bushes underneath it had been crushed, and I could faintly make out the shape of something furry. A raccoon, I suspected. The intestines bursting out of its eye sockets were already attracting flies. The stairs were concrete, old. I could make out the lines of graffiti on the lower steps. A metal handrail bowed out haphazardly, most of the supports bent or gone. 10, maybe 12 steps. In a rush, the sound of the world came back, and I heard the faint electrical snap of a fly exploding near my ear. I sprinted back to camp. I grabbed the rifle out of the pickup I'd taken to the site and stood at the edge of the camp, my back to the woods. I stood there and watched until the sun came up. I watched the whole camp, every tent. I know I never fell asleep, and no one came into or out of camp, so I really don't know how a woman in one of the tents disappeared. Her tent was in my direct line of sight. They're hopeful that she's still alive, of course, but I think we'll have to close that part of the park for a while. Officially, we'll be keeping an eye on things, but I wouldn't take much comfort in that. We're keeping an eye on a lot of things. I'm on call 24 hours a day now. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it pays the bills, and sometimes they let me leave early or take extra days off if I'm tired. There's not that much going on at night, of course, but occasionally one of us has to run out and deal with something. An animal sighting, a missing person, drunk people shooting each other, that sort of thing. All in all, I get called out about 12 times a month for some kind of nighttime emergency. Generally, the calls go something like this. A text and a phone call from my boss. 15 minutes to get out the door dressed in my uniform. 30 to work. Then anywhere from 5 minutes to 8 hours dealing with the issue. If it's a missing person or the cops are involved, up to 2 days without sleep. The worst was a murder. That took a week. By the end of it, I was in hospital with severe fatigue and dehydration. My boss knows I'll pick up as soon as he calls, but I don't always hear texts. Usually he'll text first in case I'm up, but otherwise he'll get me on the phone. He's the only one who contacts me in this situation. That's always been our system in the past. So you can imagine my surprise when I got a call from him at 2 a.m. and saw I had 70 missed texts from just about every single person in our department. "Yeah, what's up?" I said, sitting up. I'm great at faking being awake on the phone. "Clearwood Trail, south entrance. It's bad. Don't worry about your clothes, just get out there." He was breathing heavy, and he didn't wait for me to finish my greeting. "What's up?" I was concerned now. My boss is unflappable. "Just get out there. It's bad." Of course, I immediately thought of the murder from before. It took us days to find all of the pieces of their skulls. "How bad?" "KD's on her way. Call when you figured it out." He hung up. He'd never sent another ranger up before me. I scrolled through a barrage of texts from them, asking for me to call them immediately. I threw my clothes on and was out the door in about 5 minutes. The drive took about 15 minutes going 90 on the freeway, and along the way, my phone kept pinging notifications. I turned it off and tossed it in the back seat. When I got there, KD was waiting for me. Something about her face was wrong, and in the non-existent light, I had to get close to her to see that she was wearing a respirator. The smell was like a wall. I ran into it about 5 feet from her and gagged. I took the respirator she handed me and strapped it on, coughing and doubled over. "Bad, huh?" she quipped, her voice muffled. She patted me on the back. "Come on." I followed her into the forest, and even behind the filters, I could still smell it. Believe me, it bothers me as much as it does anyone else when people say that something is indescribable. But I really don't know how to paint an accurate picture of what it was like. Imagine taking a fish and filling it full of other dead fish. Put the stuffed fish in a bag made out of the skin of even more dead fish and leave the bag sitting out in the sun for a few days. Sprinkle some halitosis and rotting grass on top of the bag. Let it sit for another few days. Now open the bag and stick your head in and take a nice big breath. That should give you an idea of what it was like from half a mile away. It was hard to be heard through the respirators, so we didn't talk much while we walked. Neither of us really wanted our mouths open anyway. I kept thinking about how smells are composed of particulate, and a few times I had to stop and lift the respirator to spit and dry heave. KD clapped me on the back, almost knocking me off balance and sending my spit flying. "Gross, huh?" she said, half shouting. "Don't worry, it's only worse from here." I gave her a weak thumbs up, and we kept going. She'd taken the van with our on-site equipment inside. and she'd been there long enough to have carted a couple of portable spotlights to the scene. As we crested a hill, I could see them shining on something. Something huge. The top of the thing crested out of the tree in places. A huge grey behemoth. I shot her a look, but she just grinned and waved me ahead. The smell was thick enough now to almost be visible, and something crunched under my feet. The robin I'd crushed was still alive, and it raised one wing weakly. I crushed its skull and moved on, but there were others. They remained where they'd fallen, their sides heaving, and an occasional wing raised and dropped. "Smell got them, I think," KD said, kicking a bird off the path. "There's a raccoon up here too. Took one bite and died. It was hilarious. Come look." I stepped around the birds, and the light filtered through the trees, shining on their little oil drop eyes. The path straightened, and up ahead, I could see that the hulking thing, whatever it was, had fallen right across it, about 300 yards ahead. I broke into a jog, and KD kept pace. I went as close as I could until the smell was too much. And then I just stood while KD kept going. She kicked the thing and spread her arms out, taking it all in. The way she'd illuminated it, only parts were really visible. It rose up, an impenetrable wall, and disappeared into the tops of the trees. The sporadic but careful lighting gave it an almost reverent quality, like an artifact on display. Either way I looked, the thing stretched into the dark. KD walked the length of it to my right, until I could barely make her out in the dark. I craned my head up and could just see the edge, where it curved and dipped back down. I forced myself closer to the rubbery surface of the thing. It was greyish, darker in the light, and the surface was scarred and stippled with white marks. KD came back and walked down to the left. "Come here," she called. I followed, not taking my eyes off the thing. We walked, kept walking, her hands sometimes brushing the thing. And up ahead, now I could see something sticking out of the side of the wall. "Know what it is now?" I could hear that she was grinning, enjoying the mystery. It was some kind of thick flap, huge, bigger than both of us combined. One side was attached to the thing. It hung to the ground, where it rested in the dirt. At the place where the flap joined the wall, there were strange protrusions. Ignoring the smell now, I looked closer. There were many of them, in various sizes. Small, grainy craters. That's when the pieces fit together and I backed off, stumbling over myself and almost falling into the dirt. KD lifted the pectoral flipper with great effort. "You imagine how strong they have to be to move these things? Wish it still had its tail." I ran forward and kept going, until above my head I could see something reflecting the light, just barely. Something liquid and glassy, just beginning to fog with bacteria and decay. The mouth was slightly open, and the algae in the baleen was beginning to rot. Suddenly, there was a loud, wheezing exhale, and the thing moved, just slightly. The mouth opened, showing more of the slimy, putrid baleen, and from somewhere far down on the other end, there was a creak, and a thud that I felt rather than heard. "Holy crap," KD whispered. "Thought it died an hour ago. You feel that? It's still trying." The milky eye moved to look at me, and there was another, weaker exhale. And as we stared at each other, the whale opened its mouth a little more, closed it, and died. The light left the blind eye, and the entire corpse sagged, letting off more of that horrific stench. KD was still talking. "It's another of those clean cuts. Right through the whole back of it. If you go around the other side, it's missing that fin and a big slice of its skin. But the tail's totally gone." I couldn't break away. Couldn't stop looking into the cataract that was forming. All the bacteria now free to multiply and turn everything to liquid. Through the baleen, I could just about make out the bulk of the tongue, and it was already losing colour, already being eaten from the inside. And I ran as far away as I could before doubling over and vomiting. KD ran over and patted my back. When it was over, I wiped my mouth and put the respirator back on. Now I went back to the corpse and began walking the length of it, shutting off every light. I couldn't stand to see it lit so beautifully. "I honestly don't even know who to call," KD said. Down at the other end, I could see the clean slice, where the tail had been taken off. No boat propeller could have done it, but that was no surprise. I knew what had. I wondered how big they'd been. Down there in the deepest dark, where only whales could go. It answered a theory I'd had for some time. The stares were impartial. Deep down in my gut, there was a glassy, obsidian panic that was so familiar now as to be unnoticeable, except when more weight was added. Suddenly, more than anything, I wanted to be at home in the dark. And I told KD who to call, what to do, so that I could hand her my respirator and begin the walk back to my truck. Never looking back at the corpse cresting the trees, the top of it growing its own forest of birds, feasting. We'll leave it to rot. We'll say a waterspout sucked up fish from one of the lakes and dumped them out there. When the bones are the only thing left, we'll dispose of them and the trail will reopen. I simply drove back home and went to bed. There are so many things I won't ever be able to understand about my job, and it would take me years to relate all of the things I've heard in the last few months. I guess when I feel like my job isn't in jeopardy, I'll come back. It may be in a different format, but I will come back. Thank you all for sticking by my side and enjoying the things I've talked about. If you go out into the woods, I encourage you to be safe. Bring water, food, survival equipment. Let people know where you're going and when you'll be back. Don't go on uncharted paths unless you know exactly what you're doing. And above all, don't touch them. Don't look at them. Don't go up